Hey, Dan Meyer here. Today we're going to start the first of a 5-part series talking about how to manage highly effective teams for virtual staffing, right? Highly effective managers for virtual teams is the article that I'm going to pull from. It's a series of posts that I found on LinkedIn, and I'll share with you a little about the author as I go through and talk about my own interpretation of how to manage virtual teams. This is something I've been doing for quite a while. It started in my time at Wells Fargo when I was doing analytics and data analysis work. I would work with a lot of teams virtually. I'd be the leader, project manager, team lead, in a lot of efforts with the bank where it would all be people that were spread out across the country working together and having to manage that process. And then it started when I launched my first business back in 2012 in the Philippines, where I hired a bunch of people to help me grow my business that all work from home. And then that evolved to be able to run a call center and a virtual staffing business where I have teams of VAs working for clients in the US. So for the last 25 years, I've spent a big chunk of it managing people virtually. So when I saw this series of posts, I thought, wow, this is something I should talk about because it's relevant right now. People trying to figure out how do they got through the first year of managing their team or their business virtually, and they survived, but they need to get better. They need to improve the way they're doing it. I'm sure you feel this way, like there's things that you wish that you knew before or that you want to get better at, or you're trying to figure out how do I level up my ability to do this with my team. Well, that's what we're going to talk about in these videos, right? So this is the first one we'll talk about, and it's about the transition to telecommunications, right? So how do we get ourselves ready and make sure we've gotten ourselves to a point where we want to make sure that we're no longer that traditional office-based hierarchy and that kind of structure where you can walk over to someone's desk and just say, hey, how's this going? Or can you help me with this? Or, I just want to shoot the breeze. Traditional office-based working roles have changed, and they're not going back. Even if the pandemic went away right now, people will still be hesitant to go back and be in large groups and spend a lot of their time in a place with a lot of other people close together. I think we're going to be forever changed by the pandemic. And we may get back to somewhat of a semblance to what it was like before, but it'd actually be foolish to go back the way we were doing it before. There were a lot of inefficiencies in time that we wasted, productivity we wasted, because we were doing things where we didn't have to be in person to do them. A lot of meetings, a lot of project updates, a lot of status check-ins, a lot of things we were doing where we all had to get into a room to do. Yes, we liked that interaction. Maybe we got a little more value out of the brainstorming in person, but we found that it's actually probably more efficient financially and definitely more efficient time management wise for us to do most of our meetings remotely. So with that in mind, how do you transition to telecommunications, right? This is something, again, I've been doing for 25 years, so I know it pretty well. This is something that I think that, I learned it before a lot of other people were doing it, and I've constantly improved it. And I've got to the point where I've managed to run a business of over 100 people spread out over multiple countries, working 24/7 for dozens of clients. And I do it by having built a good system and having a good team that can run this system. But the key to all that is communication. So optimizing telecommunications was something that I've always been on the forefront of. And I'll talk about several of the things that we talked about in my business, and I talk about with my clients. I'll share that with you. So again, the article here is highly effective managers of virtual teams. They empower people to higher productivity. You should be more productive working at home than in an office. Not always true for everyone, and there's obviously a lot of myths and misconceptions about the pros and cons of each. But in the end, I think in the last year, for most people I've talked to in most situations, they see that they're actually more productive because they're wasting less time doing unproductive things. When I was at Wells Fargo, I gotta admit, we spent much more time than we should have at Starbucks. We took really long lunches sometimes. Not all the time. We still worked hard, still did a lot of great things. But the propensity to be out there and kind of waste time at the water cooler or at lunch or take a coffee break, that was a big time killer. And we're not doing that as much anymore, if at all. That makes a big difference. And then the fact that we don't sit around and just chill. We sometimes we do it online, but most of us, as soon as the Zoom call ends, we're done. Boom, gone. We're kind of zoomed out. We don't want to do a lot of additional Zoom stuff. We have our own things we want to get to. So highly productive teams are something we've seen increase with effective virtual staff. Another is a better work-life balance. For most of us, Even though we've had to deal with, pandemic of having kids at home, not being able to go out, having our exercise options curtailed, not being able to take great vacations. In the end, though, we've been able to spend probably more quality time with our family than we ever thought we could. That's a good thing. And for the most of us, I think that's a positive that we're going to take out of this and look to continue. Having more time where you can work around your family and in your home. There's certain things you should do to be successful. Like you should have a space in your place where you can work. That is a workplace where you don't want to have your desk you're working at next to your bed if you can avoid it. You don't want to have the place where you do business the same place where your kids play if you can avoid it. Now, not all of us can, but in general, you want to set up that kind of separation of doing work in an office but within your home. I think is a sweet spot a lot of us have found in 2020. The next thing is less time spent on commuting and money, right? So every day, even when I had an office across town, it'd take me 10, 15 minutes to get there. That's a half hour every day minimum I would lose being in the car. Now, some days that's good because I could chill and let my mind relax. I could run errands. I could do that kind of stuff. But day in, day out, when you add it up, 5 days a week, that's 2.5 hours of productivity I would lose every week just commuting to the office. And that was only half an hour. I've had jobs before where I had to commute an hour and a half. And so that commute time's a big deal. And the last one is it lowers our stress level, right? Working virtually, we can detach easier. We can get away from easier. We're not as caught up in toxic environments. Everyone's got someone they've worked with who just drove them crazy. Everyone has some part of their past where they had a work experience where being next to, in the middle, or around certain people just raised your stress level, right? Raised your blood pressure. We have a lot less of that, ideally, for most of us in the new age. Some people have more stress at home. Some people have a worse work-life balance. Some people are less productive at home. But for most of us, if we were to survey it, probably 80+% of us find that virtual working is better. So effective telecommunication, right? What do companies do to be more effective communicating? Well, here's the certain things they do. They define and use the right tools for communication. Every business will have their own version of this. No one's going to be exactly the same. For my business, most of my team communications happens through Facebook Messenger. Most of my communications with my clients happens through Facebook Messenger. A fair amount will happen via text, and some will happen via email, and very little will happen via phone call. And some will be in Zoom, but most of it will be through Facebook Messenger. That's the best way to have quick chats. Now, every business has got some way to message employees. Some people have their own internal systems. Some people use, off-the-shelf software. Some people use social media apps. Whatever it is, use what your team uses. And as much as possible, encourage that open flow of communication. When it comes to actually doing meetings and stuff, I'll talk about that in a bit, and I'll talk about that more in a farther video as far as Zoom specifically. Most of the communication, though, is informal, happens via chat. Before this goes too long, I want to share with you the other ones real quick, right? Be aware of time zone differences, right? This is a challenge for me because I have clients in multiple time zones and employees in multiple time zones. And when we go through daylight savings, it even gets worse. So I have to always look it up. So one of my best friends is this, asking Siri, what time is it in what city? Or you can also go to websites and look up time zones. But make sure that you're aware of that. You don't want people to have to attend meetings when they're supposed to be sleeping. That's not good for anybody, and that really destroys the work-life balance. So create a list of all the people that you have to interact with and what time zone they're in, and what time zone they prefer to work in is also important, right? So just because somebody's awake doesn't mean that's when they want to be able to work. We all are on this mode where we want to work at our own pace because we're doing it pretty unsupervised or lightly supervised. So you want to think about when are you most effective. So I try to limit my communications to people that I interact with a couple hours before and after lunch. Early morning, I'm doing all kinds of preparatory stuff. I'm trying to get myself organized. Afternoon and evening stuff, I'm doing follow-up. I'm doing, more things, preparing for big picture stuff. And then before I go to bed at the end of the night, I want to focus on what's coming for tomorrow. So I limit my communication availability to those couple hours before and after lunch. Now I'll do communications occasionally or if needed at different times, but 90% of all my communication, both to my employees and my clients, happens the 2 hours before and 2 hours after I take lunch. Next up is communicate regularly, right? Schedule times to communicate. This is important because even though we're using casual tools and we're doing things at home and we're kind of chilling in our pajamas or we're wearing sandals, we still want to keep the business regular, and communicating regular is important, right? Setting times to have staff meetings, setting times to have check-ins, having one-on-ones with key employees, being able to talk to your boss on a regular basis. You want to set these times up. So even if you don't always use them, they're there so that you can use them when you need them. Check in, and that helps you be consistent. Only schedule meetings when you have to. If you don't have to have a meeting, don't have a meeting. People are completely over-Zoomed, right? We are tired of being on Zoom calls all the time. It's draining. It's difficult to maintain. It ruins our flow. So only schedule a meeting if you have to meet with somebody for sure. If you can't, be something you can do via a quick phone conversation, a quick chat conversation, text them, email them. If you have to do it in a meeting, if you have to have a Zoom call with somebody, make sure that it's well organized and you get it going and do it. And don't waste time. You want to keep it professional, right? I always make sure that I wear a professional shirt. I have a nice background. I try as much as possible never to have a communication where there's distracting background. I don't go on Zoom calls. I don't take personal calls. I don't record videos when I have a lot of distraction around me. I want to make sure that what I'm talking about, people can focus on. And that happens best when you have a professional environment. So it just goes a long way to showing how you want to treat other people when you show how professional you are by what you have around you and the setup and the style of your communication. Again, whether it be video or audio or even text-based. If it's text-based, you want to keep things professional. Try to mitigate the emojis and the abbreviations. Don't get too cute. Keep it appropriate. The next thing is document everything. This is a big challenge for us because we're in the flow of working at home. We don't document a lot of stuff, but you want to document what you're doing. Everything I talked about before, who you're talking to, when you're checking in with them, what tools you want to be able to use. You should have some kind of tool to help you manage everything. A good project management tool is a good place to document everything. Put it in Trello or in Monday or in Asana, a good project management tool. Like those three are my favorites. Document everything. Keep yourself organized. I have a Trello board that I use to manage my big picture stuff, and I have an Excel spreadsheet that I use to manage my day-to-day to-do list. Keeps me organized, and that documenting everything really saves me. So that's really it. That's really the big things that you should focus on when you talk about telecommunication, right? So transitioning to telecommunication. The idea is that you want to really think through the way you're communicating with your employees, with your team members, with your boss, and with your clients, with your customers, with your potential clients. Everything should be thought out, and you want to put this together in some kind of organized plan. You want to check in with people on a regular basis. You want to build consistency. And this is really the mantra that I'll talk to you about for my company, Sonic VA. Sonic VA is a company where we help people offload or delegate things that keep them busy. We want people to focus on what they do best and hire someone else for all the rest. So if you're looking to have more of that in your life, in your business, and you need an assistant, Sonic VA can help you do that. So you can go to our website, sonicva.com, sonicva.com. You can learn about what we do. We help companies figure out how to get more organized with data. We help them prepare their elements of data for more success. We help them do things like build YouTube videos, create graphic designs, manage social media platforms, whatever it takes to help you be more consistent, have more clarity in message, and build more certainty between you and your customers, your clients, your employees. That's what we can help you do. So that's sonicva.com. So basically, when it comes to telecommunications, just document it, make sure everyone's on the same page, be consistent, and execute it, and you'll be more successful. This is the key to my success in my business, going back for 25 years, is really making sure that I can optimize telecommunication to keep everyone on the same page. So that's my talk for today. Thank you for your time. Now go out and communicate effectively.